You this. Adorable toddlers get into mischief when mom and dad are fast asleep.
Why? What? I'm talking to you. I got it. What do you want? I want to eat down your bed. We like it because to like it down. Yep. Thank you, Mima.
These kids. After all that, little sister realizes she left her doll behind, though, and it was Big Brother to the rescue.
Who gives your baby? Oh, I'll get baby. Thank you. So I'll give you another baby.
Oh my God, how cute. This little girl also forgot her blankie, but she decided that she could go without it. Oh my gosh, that is so stinking cute.
Kids, they'll be fighting in a few years, but right now they're cute.
Have a good day.
See you later.
Anyone from California?
Well, I heard the island of Staten Island.
Staten Island.
There you go. I saw that over there, and I heard Pennsylvania over there.
Okay. Anyone from South Carolina? You are? Where?
You know what? We're going to have 3 hours to meet all of you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Just the city.
Just moved to Daniel Island. I'm working on it.
Nice. Daniel Island. My sister's in Mount Pleasant, too.
All right. And I was in Charleston yesterday.
You were?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I was doing something for Fox Nation on Fort Sumter.
What'd you think?
I think it's really nice, and they miss you, but they can't have you back.
The problem is traffic's gotten so bad because we all brag about Charleston.
Oh, that's
right.
Right.
Everyone in Charleston saying stop talking about it.
Nobody told the geniuses at Waze that Charleston has one-way streets that are really small. At one point, Waze put me on a highway. That's all I asked. So I was taking turns.
You should be used to it. New York City's the same way.
Obviously it worked out. You got here just in time for the big live show. How many of you watched the president's rally last night where he was at the Target Center?
I wish it was longer.
Yeah, it was 102 minutes. They had 19,500 people in attendance. There were thousands outside. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if you missed the president, he made very clear he's going to win the state of Minnesota in 2020. And the Democrats are actually hurting themselves. Watch this.
Our bold pursuit of this pro-American agenda has enraged the failed ruling class in Washington. They want to erase your vote like it never existed. They want to erase your voice, and they want to erase your future. But they will fail because in America, the people rule again. Democrats are on a crusade to destroy our democracy. That's what's happening. We will never let it happen. We are going to keep on fighting, and we are going to keep on winning.
Right, and he did say he intends to win, as I said a moment ago. Minnesota, a Republican has not carried that state since 1972. The president said, I'm going to be the next one.
He's spending money. He's lining up volunteers. I thought it was very interesting, too, that he's pointing out the big picture. He says, along with pointing out impeachment, he also pointed out when it started. And it was hours after his inauguration, the Washington Post writing a story about now the quest for impeachment begins. Yeah. And guess what? We're 3 years in, and it never stopped.
He told some pretty emotional stories about visiting our soldiers in Walter Reed and how they have sacrificed so much. They're missing arms, they're missing legs. He talked about the letters that he has to write home. He said, that's one of the toughest parts of my job. I have to write letters to parents that say that your son is not coming back, your daughter's not coming back. He said everyone gets a different letter, which I thought was really sweet. He also mentioned something. You know, when we were growing up, you hear cops, you saw those people that were wearing the T-shirts that said cops for Trump. Even people in the audience that looked like they were not police officers were wearing those behind him. But he said, my daddy always told me not to use the word cops, that was disrespectful. And I always heard that growing up too, but it appears that law enforcement officers are kind of adopting that now. I heard Tom Homan using that exact word.
Well, they were certainly in attendance last night. At least they sold a lot of those red T-shirts for the police department union out there.
Because the mayor didn't want the police officers to wear their uniforms.
That's right. Nonetheless, the president, you know, that whole impeachment thing, You can tell it's front of mind for him. He doesn't think it's going to work, and last night he made that clear.
We just got rid of the Russia hoax, and then a week later, the Ukraine hoax starts. I had a week of I can think about everything perfect, it's so beautiful. They destroyed so many lives, and they're continuing to do it, and it's a disgrace. When all of their ludicrous hoaxes have been exposed as frauds, these sinister fakers then try to impeach you for daring to call out their own corruption.
Right, and there's some developments. I'm a little confused because the administration says I'm not cooperating, but today it looks like they're going to allow this ambassador, which clearly has negative things to say, you would think, about the president, because the president got rid of her, said she's been bad-mouthing me all over Ukraine. I'm going to make a change there. Right. And I believe he's going to let her talk, so why not let your appointed European Union ambassador talk on Monday? Why let her talk on Friday? I don't think Trey Gowdy can get there soon enough to maybe take some organization.
I think the president yesterday was talking about there are certain rules and requirements. Mr. Gowdy may not be able to help the team and for a month or two. One other thing regarding the whistleblower, we're going to talk about this a little later on. The Wall Street Journal now says that the whistleblower would like to talk to Congress, but only on a piece of paper. They would like to submit the testimony, don't want to appear in person because they are worried about being identified for personal safety.
Well, if you think about the inquiry in secret, the transcript, no quid pro quo. Pelosi says she doesn't want to go on record because then the GOP would be able to call in the whistleblower. Biden was bragging about quid pro quo. I understand the president's frustration here.
Wow, I'm a little intimidated by the overhead camera. Are you guys shocked by that? I thought it was coming for us for a second.
I bought it from Sharper Image. It's a drone.
No kidding. Where do you get this budget?
Listen, that's how we were able to fly everybody in first class. Thanks for coming, folks.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to come out and meet some of you folks in just a minute, but in the meantime, Griff Jenkins is live in Washington right now as we learn more about that whistleblower.
Good morning to you, Steve Ainsley and Brian, and esteemed invited live audience guests. Listen, we're trying to find out who the whistleblower is here in Washington. According to the Washington Examiner, he worked for Vice President Biden. Remember, he was Obama's point man on Ukraine policy. Now, the Examiner writes this today, quote, he is a career CIA analyst who is detailed to the National Security Council at the White House and has since left. In that capacity, this source says he would have come into contact with Biden. Lawyers for the whistleblower pushed back yesterday on allegations of political bias, but they did acknowledge the tie to presidential candidates when they were elected officials. And Steve, as you mentioned, the Wall Street Journal reporting this morning that this whistleblower wants to testify in writing, not in person, to protect their identity. Meanwhile, last night in Minnesota, the president had choice words for the former Veep's son.
By the way, whatever happened to Hunter? Where the hell is he? Hey, fellas, I have an idea for a new T-shirt. I love the cops, but let's do another T-shirt. Where's Hunter?
Oh, and he wasn't done there.
Hunter, you're a loser. And your father was never considered smart. He was never considered a good senator. He was only a good vice president because he understood how to kiss Barack Obama's.
Now it's all eyes on former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, who you mentioned, Brian, is scheduled to appear in a closed-door transcribed interview. It's not the traditional hearing or deposition. That has different rules. Now, will she show? It's not actually certain, given the administration pulled the EU ambassador, Gordon Sondland, earlier this week. Sondland, by the way, now expected to appear as well for one of these transcribed interviews next week. We shall see if that happens. Maybe it's a sign that the administration is cracking the door open to cooperating somewhat, but the scope, by the way, from House Democrats is widening. They've now issued a subpoena also for Energy Secretary Rick Perry. Right. Guys?
That should be interesting. Rick Perry is Secretary of Energy. Yeah, I recommended he go over there and talk about energy. I got nothing else to add.
But there was the word Ukraine in that.
It's unbelievable.
And
here's one thing that's abundantly clear. Thanks, Griff. I'm going to thank you again in the break. I owe you one. He gets paid by the update, by the way. Real quick. It's amazing. It looks like they only have this transcript. This is what they have to go on because there's still an all-out effort
For the
to
phone
get
call.
for the phone call
Which we've
to
all
get
read.
the Mueller information, the underlying documents on the Mueller situation. Because I think on some level they're saying the president totally upended their strategy by releasing the transcript because he hadn't been cooperating with the post-game show on the Mueller probe.
Right.
They thought he'd do the same thing. So they're trying to get something, and that's what they're trying to get, some behind closed doors. And you know they're getting nothing if you hear nothing leaking out of the meeting.
Exactly, because you know when Mr. Volcker came out last week, he didn't say what was said inside, but then eventually we heard that he apparently said there was no quid pro quo. Repeatedly, Republicans want the transcripts out, the Democrats do not. Speaking of the post-game show, let's talk a little bit about the NBA. Are you guys paying attention to what's going on in the NBA? Yeah. How many
Good
people
China.
think the NBA looks terrible in this? Yeah.
Well, I mean, basically, corporate America has given in pretty consistently to China, and we haven't been paying much attention because there's so much else going on. Tiffany's kowtowed, gave in. They apologized. The Marriott fired workers because evidently one ad insulted them. Mercedes has given in. Now the NBA, one tweet by the general manager of the Rockets saying they're basically showing sympathy for the protesters in Hong Kong because they want this thing called freedom.
Right.
And it's unearthed a multi-billion-dollar, 30-year relationship with an entire country. And instead of standing up the way they stood up when the problems would happen with Eric Garner and Stand Up, Don't Shoot and other issues in our country and taking on our president at every turn, not showing up at the White House, they have gone radio silent on this.
Steve Kerr and Coach Popovich of the Spurs, they've been very vocal about their disdain, basically, for the president. They don't like a lot of his policies. Steve Kerr, especially with gun control, because his father was killed in Beirut. So when he was, and that is a great song.
It is.
I love it. Okay, creators of the. Were you going to say something?
I just said that I had the American Idol beat. I thought it was going to last me my entire career. It ended in 3 years. That was Mandisa,
I know.
right? Mm-hmm. Whatever happened to her? All right, that was my unexpressed thought.
She's making Christian music now.
All right.
Yeah. Now you should feel bad.
No, I feel terrible. Well, let's make me feel better. This is a good segment.
This is about Sesame Street. We've heard this story. Creators of the iconic children's show Sesame Street tackling one of the toughest topics of the day, the opioid crisis.
The online-only segment featuring a character named Carly who lives in foster care while her mother seeks treatment for her addiction. Let's listen.
My mom needs help learning to take better care of herself, so she talks to people with the same problem.
So let's talk to Dr. Nicole Saphier, a radiologist and a Fox News contributor, about what Sesame Street is doing. What do you think about this?
Well, so listen, guys, it's very important to reduce the stigma and increase awareness of substance abuse and mental health in
Because
general.
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. It's
what
rampant in the
age?
United States. However, I do have some concerns about normalizing substance abuse with our youth. Although addiction is rampant in the United States, you know, I think that it's a parent's role to have that conversation with their children about it, and I just don't want it to become a part of their normal discussion as preschoolers about substance abuse.
Well, then at what age do you start talking to your kids about it? Because they see it everywhere.
So absolutely, and schools are incorporating some of this into their curriculum. I think middle school age is probably a little bit better for them. They have more of an awareness. I just think the target audience for Sesame Street just might be a little young.
2 years
However,
old and 3 years
I
old.
do like that they do take social issues, kind of like South Park, and they talk about them, and they're all inclusive. I just want to make sure that someone is actually talking to those children, and they're not just being put in front of these shows and then not having a follow-up conversation.
Yeah, I just think too, maybe it helps that you can click on it rather than it comes up on your episode. So maybe if you know of a family that's going through it, maybe you get your son or daughter and say, if you want to understand what they're going through, maybe watch this as opposed to on this episode today where you have no choice.
Well, plus there's the issue.
Kids click these days.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah, but-
your daughter does, my kids do.
My daughter's 3. She watches Sesame Street. If she watched that episode, she would have questions. Mommy, are you okay? What's going on? I think 3 years old is just too young to start talking about that.
I have to agree with you a little bit. Again, I like to promote awareness and decreasing the stigma when it comes to substance abuse. I want to have more conversation about it.
Well, it is out there right now. So
the fear aspect. I don't want her to think anything's wrong. Mama,
In the
what's
meantime-
wrong with that, Mama?
Pardon me. Can we see the hands? How many of you are members of Fox Nation? Oh, you know what? we need to see more of you. Take a look at FoxNation.com because, Dr. Saphier, tell us a little bit about what you've got going on.
Yes, a documentary I've been working on for the past several months, America's Opioid Conspiracy, just went live on Fox Nation yesterday. It's an incredible documentary. We really looked at some of the deep-rooted issues when it came to how the opioid crisis became what it is.
Right.
We had interviews with whistleblowers, former addicts. But here, take a look. We have a great little preview of it.
There were many different lies that Purdue Pharma told in order to turn OxyContin into the multi-billion-dollar product that it would become.
They flooded the marketplace with these opioids, got people hooked, and as a result of getting them hooked, they were able to sell even more.
I would hear the doctors come like, oh, his brain's frying right now. He has 106 fever, 105 fever, 107 fever. His brain is frying. And I just wanted to tell him, I'm not brain dead, I can hear you.
There you go. If you'd like to take a look at it, go to FoxNation.com. Dr. Saphier, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Great seeing you. Great seeing everyone.
Right now, and he's up next. He's got a very...
Hey, look who's here!
This program is brought to you by All Day, All Night Protection from Frequent Heartburn with Nexium 24HR.
Before Nexium.
Trump ramping up his feud with Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey over the city's policies on refugee settlement. Listen.
I issued an executive action making clear that no refugees will be resettled in any city or any state without the express written consent of that city or that state. So speak to your mayor.
Well, that city's mayor responded by a tweet quoting here, consent given. Immigrants and refugees are welcome in Minneapolis. So it's official, according to Jacob Frey.
All right. What about illegal immigrants? And what about if they are refugees? What the president's point was, did anyone ask people of Minnesota should they get all the refugees that they got? Because they just seem to have showed up. Here to react is Fox News contributor Tom Homan. Tom, what do you say? I know in our town in particular, when we had that surge during when you were working there, there was that surge of unaccompanied minors. All of a sudden, the working class school districts, who are underfinanced anyway, doubled their class size because these kids just showed up because the federal government did this without consulting the state government or the local government. Is that right?
No, it's not. And, you know, the mayor needs to remember who he works for. He's not a dictator. He works for the taxpayers of that city. And the taxpayers have the right to decide. I mean, they pay school taxes, they pay property taxes. They should have a say in how that city runs. So shame on him. I'll tell him the same thing I told Representative J. Paul. They work for us, but they forget that. They forget that.
What did you think of the rally last night? The president kept calling police officers cops. He talked about how grateful he was for all of them, but he mentioned something. He said, my daddy always said, don't say cops. It's disrespectful. We learned in journalism school not to say cops, but I found myself moving to New York, and now everyone says it. What do you think as a law enforcement officer?
Well, my dad said the same thing, but my dad was a police officer in New York. I was a police officer in New York. Cops are cops, especially in New York. We're cops. So, you know, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I mean, you thought 2 uniforms out front of the building this morning. Yep. They call themselves cops. And every time I see an NYPD officer, I'll shake their hand because you're the finest 1% this nation has to offer.
Last night at the rally, because there was this problem between whether or not the officers could wear their uniforms inside the arena as of last night. A lot of the officers and supporters wore those red Cops for Trump T-shirts. Right behind the president, there was dozens of them. Don't know exactly what the complete count was, but at least the people who were in attendance last night were big supporters of cops.
Well, look, I think the American people should be big supporters of cops, right? These men and women lead the safety and security of their home every day. to defend this nation, putting themselves in harm's way. Many don't go home. If you go to the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C., there's over 20,000 men and women that died serving this country. And they strap a gun to their hip every day and wear bulletproof vests. That's their tools of the trade. And I tell you, cops love this president. I mean, I've been to the ICP, I've been to the National Sheriff's Association. This president has the six of every police officer in this country. He loves law enforcement. He loves first responders, firemen.
Yep.
This president gets it, and God bless him for it. You know, I've said this many times. I'll say 1,000 times more. I've worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan, but this is the greatest president I ever worked for, Donald Trump.
Was just named Man of the Year by Blue Magazine. What an honor.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I mean, you know, I got a Presidential Rank Award one time from the highest award issued by a president, and it's something I cherish. But when you get an award from cops, from family, because I was a cop for so many years, that really means something special. I just wish they always use a picture of me yelling at somebody.
I don't know where they get them.
I mean, this. I remember this. I was at the White House giving a press briefing. I was yelling at a reporter for asking me a stupid question. And but you go on the internet, I'm yelling all the time. But maybe I need to yell less. But I'm angry sometimes at what's going on in this country.
People like that about you because you're saying what we're all thinking.
No, you know what? When I go to Congress, I refuse to let them lie to American people. It's a shame that they're not under oath. Yeah. And they can hit the gavel all they want. They can try to shut me up. But I want to get to the truth for the American people.
But the bottom line is, people should understand that you work for President Obama, you work for Democrats and Republicans, and you're just amazed at how they have a different tone. You're the same guy. It doesn't matter, you know, who you're out there for. Congratulations, that's great. You think that, you know, when you're retired, maybe you wouldn't be eligible, but now they're still noticing everything you're still doing, and that's awesome.
Well, I appreciate, again, that's the greatest honor of my life is being recognized by cops, because I was one.
And when Ainsley gets pulled over, she always says, "I know Tom Holman," and she's able to go.
Every time.
That's the key.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Straight ahead. Up next for our live studio audience, ladies and gentlemen, it's Diamond and Silk. The Trump rally last night. How many have you been to?
Oh, several. But last night was so amazing. Phenomenal. Our president did a phenomenal job with his message, bringing it across to the American people.
And I love how he called out all of the crooks.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. There's a report now in the Daily Beast saying that Elizabeth Warren has been in contact with Andrew Gillum. He is the guy from Tallahassee, Florida that ran against DeSantis for the governor position, and he lost to DeSantis. But what do you think about this? That could be her vice president should she get the nomination.
Pandering. Again, Elizabeth Warren, who is a fake, a fraud, and a phony. She is. Gilliam need to be very careful because he's about to be used. What happened in the Obama era when all of these black people rushed to the polls, you will never see that happening with an Elizabeth Warren and a Gilliam.
That's right.
Black people, because black people look at Elizabeth Warren as another Rachel Dolezal. She's a fake.
Yes.
She's a liar.
She don't know who she is.
That's right.
She claims to be a Native American. She claims to be a minority, and she do not know who she is.
She don't know the shoes that minorities walk in, and so it's offensive.
That's right.
She will not. Black people not going to vote for her like that.
According to this particular story, they're talking about the fact that he's from Florida, and to win the presidency, you need the state of Florida. So maybe putting somebody on the ticket from Florida is a good idea.
I don't care where he's from. She not going to win the election with him.
Well,
that's a 52 fake
He's under an ethics violation. I mean, they're still investigating him for that. Meanwhile, there's no doubt about it. On Sunday, most people were focused on what was happening at the Dallas Cowboy game, which they lost to the Packers. But other people were looking up into the suites, and they saw Ellen DeGeneres and George W. Bush together. And that upset a lot of people in the LGBT community. They thought it's a sellout. I'm not sure what that was about. They said she came out and said, I'm friends with them. Just because we disagree on certain things doesn't mean we can't be friends. Listen.
Just because I don't agree with someone on everything doesn't mean that I'm not going to be friends with them. When I say be kind to one another, I don't mean only the people that think the same way that you do. I mean be kind to everyone.
But there has been some backlash because some people just simply do not like George W. Bush and are infuriated he sat down next door.
But you know what? Kudos to Ellen. I appreciate what she did.
Yes.
Kudos to her.
Kudos to her.
But now Ellen get to see the people that she represent, the party that she represent, what they do. Yep. It's like the mob. They bash you when you don't go along with their agenda.
Look what happened outside Minnesota's arena last night. The Minneapolis Arena.
But you know what? I don't want to focus on the protesters. There was more people inside that arena. Almost 20,000 people. And outside the arena than the protesters. So why are we focusing on the protesters?
They're just intolerant. That was my point. Mark Ruffalo had put
this is
up.
what he said, the actor.
actor.
So first, Reese Witherspoon put out a tweet saying she supports Ellen, and then she had to take it down because she had so many people that said negative things. But Mark Ruffalo, he's been very outspoken about the president. He said, sorry until George W. Bush is brought to justice for the crimes of the Iraq War, including American-led torture, Iraqi deaths and displacement, and the deep scars, emotional and otherwise, inflicted on our military that served his folly. We can't even begin to talk about kindness.
Oh, that's so sad.
It's really sick
because
and
if we
sad.
want to look at the atrocities that happen in America, let's look at the Democrat Party.
That's right.
The party of KKK, the party of Jim Crow. Let's look at that particular
party of slavery.
the party that they represent.
That's
let's
right.
look at that if you want to talk about that. Listen, it's time for us to stop with the bickering and start loving each other, even when we are different.
That's right. Yeah. That's something that's missing. We don't know how to agree to disagree when we're having a disagreement. We don't know how to respect each other anymore. And the sad thing is that the left blames the right, but I see the left out there, like you say, protesting and in the streets and acting a fool.
America, pardon me, has become so polarized. That's why a lot of people are afraid to speak out, but you certainly aren't. Ladies and gentlemen, Diamond and Scott.
Texas is officially in full swing. Last year, more than 2 million people attended that annual event.
Well, Fox Nation host Abby Hornacek is there checking out all the festivities. It's early, but she's up. Hey, Abby.
Hey guys, yes, it is early. A little bit later, this place will be an absolute madhouse. What started on 80 acres back in 1886 now sees over 2 million people, like you mentioned. Yesterday, I was lucky enough to be one of those people. Take a look. 5-foot Big Tex, you know you've made it to the heart of the longest running state fair in our country. They say everything's bigger in Texas. So let's go find out why.
Yes. I think you can come in here, you can lose all your worries.
The line for the Cordy Dogs? This is the line. You're kidding. What's so good about a Fletcher's Cordy Dog?
Have you had one?
Not scratch the surface. So let's get to it. Some rides and some games, shall we? Been on my bucket list for a very long time because I'm almost too scared to do it. There's no turning back. That was awesome! That was awesome! The State Fair of Texas is awesome! I feel very lightheaded. Woo! All right, I am here with Shanna, Trey, and Marilyn. Guys, what does it take to show this beautiful cow?
It takes a lot of preparation, a lot of time. You normally need to start about at least 90 days in advance with a good feeding program. And always a good bath. You know, she always wanted to be clean and pretty.
Yeah. Well, she is very beautiful, and she's a mother cow, so hopefully I'll have, maybe I'll have to come back for the birth.
You
Guys,
will.
So beautiful. Yes, we are doing things at the game. You know, Fox Nation, we're doing American Arenas, and
That's
Marilyn, thank you so much for letting us meet you.
Abby, what was the best thing you ate? She can hear us.
You don't have to answer, Ainsley. I know the feeling.
I just don't know that after I ate all that stuff, I'd go riding on those crazy rides.
And Abby, if the water breaks, we'll cut into her live. If it means cutting out of a pillow commercial.
If the water breaks.
So on the cow, it's about to give birth.
I don't think you would
carry it live.
All right.
Okay, go to Fox Fox Nation to catch Diamond and Silk and Abby. Abby has a show called American Arenas. But first, look who's here, y'all. It's Ed Henry.
Has always been a league that prides itself on its player and its coaches being able to speak out openly about political and societal affairs. I just wonder, after the events of this week and the fallout we've seen, whether you would both feel differently about speaking out in that way in future.
Excuse me, we're taking basketball questions only.
It's a legitimate question. This is an event that's happened this week during the NBA.
The answer, we're taking basketball.
This particular question has not been answered. James.
Here to react is Fox News Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry. Hey, Ed.
Good to see you. I feel like the applause is getting louder.
And for you, Ed, the cutaway of that shot was even important because Harden, James Harden, superstar, they were just sitting back. They wouldn't even get to the microphone.
And
they wouldn't even lean forward.
It infuriates me that these NBA players, I love the NBA. My son Patrick's a huge NBA fan. I grew up a baseball fan. Now I love the NBA because of my son. We go to games together. And yet these NBA stars are disappointing me and I think a lot of people because they're not standing up for freedom. They're not standing up even for America in some cases. Here they are under the guise of freedom of speech and all of the rest. They've been claiming in the last 2 or 3 years that they have the right to attack President Trump on a whole bunch of issues, whether it's Harden, whether it's LeBron James, whether it's Steve Kerr, who you were talking about a moment ago, the coach of the Golden State Warriors. And in fact, Steve Kerr and the rest of the Warriors didn't go to the White House after they won the championship because they said, well, President Trump didn't really invite us. And they said at one point, Steve Kerr said, I don't want to shake his hand. It's a respect issue. This guy doesn't stand up for all these different rights. So now they have a chance. So, okay, that's fine. If you genuinely believe that and that's your principle, you should still be respectful to the president, I believe, whomever the president is. But if you want to stand up on rights, do it. But then be consistent and stand up to communist China. And they're not doing it because the NBA makes big money in China.
Sure, and China said to the NBA, you can play the game tomorrow night, but nobody talks to the press. You guys just got airing the game.
How much have we heard from the left? Oh, the President Trump doesn't like the media. He says fake news. He's shutting down free speech. Meanwhile, he'll take dozens of questions every time he gets in front of a camera. He'll exhaust everything. Here you are talking. One reporter stands up and asks one question about China. Oh, no, we're not going to talk about that. Right, so and James Harden and these other guys won't stand up and say anything. It's disgraceful.
So, by the way, the NBA did apologize, Ed, for shutting down that reporter during today's Houston Rockets media availability. A team representative inappropriately interjected to prevent CNN's reporter to receive an answer to their question. We've apologized to the reporter, and this was inconsistent with how the NBA conducts media events. Not in China, it's not inconsistent. And by the way, James Harden, to the Chinese press, if you can call it that, apologized for the general manager's tweet of the Houston Rockets who just supported Hong Kong.
It gets worse because you heard Steve Kerr, and you played this clip earlier. When pressed about why he hasn't talked about China's human rights abuses, he said, well, I haven't been asked about America's human rights problems as well, and shootings in malls. That's a real problem in America, but to blame America for China's, whether it's prison camps or the litany of human rights abuses that go on there, for Steve Kerr, who, he wants to be one of these woke guys who's out there speaking out. Speak out on this as well. And Adam Silver, the commissioner, to your point about, now the NBA is sort of apologizing for this. Well, at the beginning of this whole controversy a few days ago, Adam Silver's initial statement was like, hey, let's not be mean to China. And then when he got the backlash, he got tougher. They just get it right the first time.
We're all going to be watching.
I'll see you this weekend.
And this weekend, right up there in the mezzanine level. Fox and Friends.
See you guys very much.
What would you say you do here?
Okay. All right, your boss may find out soon enough. According to a new survey, over 200 corporations, some 80% say they will be monitoring their employees by the year 2020. 80%.
Here with more is Kurt the Cyber Guy. Kurt?
Already doing it like, hey, good morning. Hey. They're already monitoring our
where we are at work, when we arrive at work, and things like that. So what you want to do really is understand how are they monitoring us at work. So the obvious things are there. You have the surveillance security cameras, right? But did you know that if you have a corporate issued laptop or a phone, that they can tap through the camera of that? And here's what they're looking at.
Tap through the camera?
Yeah, of your laptop.
It belongs to them.
It belongs to them, and they have every right to do that, even if you're not at work. It's still their device, and they have permission to do that. And they want to monitor your facial expression. Why would they want to know that? They want to know if you're frustrated at work, if you're happy at work, or anything like that.
But they can listen to your private conversations with your spouse at home?
Yeah, anything you've recorded, all the photographs on your phone or this device
belong to them. It's their device.
Correct.
Can you do anything to shut it down?
Well, there are a few things you can do. Like, I want to just show you this one little thing. So you can open up your phone, and you would find out when you open up your phone that if you go to settings, it would immediately say at settings in the top next to your name whether you have what's called a supervised phone. So it'll say this phone is supervised by fill in the company name.
Right.
And that tells you that they're into your junk.
Especially if they give you the phone.
Correct.
So they'll have every right to do it.
There's no expectation of privacy.
What if you're in your office and you log onto your personal email, like Gmail account? Can they read your Gmail?
Yes, and they can hold that against you. If you go on Facebook,
You're in trouble,
Instagram.
Brian.
No.
You're in big trouble.
You're talking about you. But Kurt, it's not just your company looking at it. Gmail's looking at your email too.
All the time. But worse is that you don't want your boss or people at work to judge you based on your personal life of what you're posting on Facebook. And then, are they going too far? Under the conference room table to have sensors that measure your body
So if you
heat?
apply
Come on.
for a new job, don't send out the email
More
from your
on
laptop
this
at
topic
work.
on cyberguy.com.
Thank you.
Kurt, what is it?